Two timelines, one impossible mystery. Life is Strange Double Exposure follows Max Caulfield as she shifts between two timelines to solve a supernatural murder mystery after finding her friend Safi dead in the snow. In this parallel timeline, Safi is still alive and still in danger. With her new power, can Max solve and prevent the same murder? Buy Life is Strange Double Exposure, available now on Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 5, and PC. Rated M for mature.
If you're an athlete, you know the greatest motivator of all is the fear of letting your teammates down. After all, a team is only as good as its weakest link. So you owe it to those wearing the same jersey as you to be your best every time you step on the field. That's why there's no vape in team. When you vape, you can expose your lungs to toxic chemicals that can damage your lungs. If you're a step behind, the team's a step behind. Brought to you by The Real Cost and the FDA.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Underrated Movie Podcast. This is a podcast that discusses films that are underrated, underappreciated, and ones that have gone on the radar and passed most people by. Today is part of a mini-series that we're doing on video game films called 8-Bit Cinema, and today we're going to be talking about the Japanese film directed by Takashi Miike, Ace Attorney. And I am your host, Derek McDuff, and joining me, first-time guest and a video game streamer, so somebody, a fellow fan of the Zelda series, I know that much, and somebody who knows a lot about video games. Excited to have you on, Riri Yells. How's it going, Riri?
Hi! Thank you, Derek. I'm so excited to be here. Yes, I love video games. I particularly enjoy video game movies, so I am very excited to talk about Ace Attorney today.
Yeah, this is going to be good. You know, we're mutual friends of Mike and JMO over there on the old Switcheroo. I know we've both been on, not on an episode together yet, but probably a Zelda one, I'm hoping we'll be able to
It sounds like we're both Zelda fans, so I think that's going to happen next season. Yeah. Spoiler. Or teaser.
There you go, yes.
Yeah. Have you beat Echoes of Wisdom yet?
I have not. I have not really had the time to play a lot of games recently. I just got back yesterday from a trip, so I really need to dive into that. So yeah, I'm a little bit behind.
No spoilers for me.
Okay, cool. But yeah, like we said, we're here to discuss Ace Attorney, which is a film that I feel like a lot of people don't even realize it exists because it never actually got a proper US release. I think it played at one film festival in Hawaii, and that was about it. There's not really a lot of info on this movie, which is kind of why this one really slid under the radar. I think if you look it up on Rotten Tomatoes, it only has 4 counted reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, so it doesn't even have a Rotten Tomatoes score. It's not enough of a sample count to even register there. So what is your history with Ace Attorney, you know, the movie and the video game series?
Sure. So I first heard of Ace Attorney when it released on the DS when I was in high school, so that dates me.
Well, I was also in high school when it came on the DS, so
okay. I feel better. So I had never even heard of a visual novel style game before, and I remember it was really big. It was very popular, and it really, for me and for a lot of people, I think, in North America, it established the genre of visual novel. It was the introduction. And it did it in a really fun way where it's familiar formatting, right? It's crime drama, court drama, investigation mystery, but it was so Japanese. Culturally, right. Contextually, everything about it was so Japanese flavored, even though they ostensibly gave them very Romanized names and they set it in LA. If you are a fan of Japanese culture, it was so delightful and fun. And so that's my knowledge of the series, was that first game. I really didn't keep up with it after that. I learned a lot about where the series went since then. But yeah, it's always definitely been like, oh, that's such a strange, fun game, is my knowledge of the series.
Yeah, I'm about the same. I didn't actually play the game, but I was really into my DS, back in high school. I took it everywhere. I had, my Pokemon Pearl and all, all that stuff. But yeah, it was a game I was definitely very aware of. And, like you said, it's the visual.
It was big here in the news. It was I didn't know until I looked this up. It was a Game Boy Advance game in Japan, and it had been out for years, and it was just a port on the DS. And I do wonder if they realized it was going to be as much of a hit here as it was, because it was suddenly everywhere, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's almost like, slightly different situation because we never got the originals, but like Fire Emblem, how that kind of blew up here eventually.
It did.
Yeah, so, but like you said, it's very, very Japanese.
Very.
And that's something that I feel like carries over to the movie.
Oh, wow. They did not give an American audience any consideration in this movie. Whew.
Yeah, not at all. So I'm not surprised that this didn't come out in the U.S.
No.
That is not shocking to me because it is very Japanese, and it is just like, the movie leans into the goofiness of the games, very like, because you see, he's got the kind of stylized, almost anime-esque hair like that you see in the games.
The anime hair did not translate well, did it?
Like, they went a full realistic, or not realistic, full just like translating the games.
They tried to go like right in the middle of realism and anime, and what was so funny about it, and I said this while I was watching it, I said, this reminds me of what cosplayers were doing with their anime hair around the time this movie was made. This movie came out in 2012. Yeah. And I just said out loud, this is exactly what we were doing, and these days we do it very differently. Mm-hmm. We give it that much more cartoon-esque flat appearance, whereas this one, you can tell it's real hair styled to be anime hair.
Right, yeah.
And boy, does meeting in the middle strike a strange silhouette.
Yeah, but I kind of loved that, to be honest, right? I kind of loved how just unashamed and weird it was to just be like, yeah, this is the game. We're just adapting.
Full send. All commit.
Right? Like, they're just, like, fully going for it in a way that, especially, I feel like, a lot of game adaptations, especially a lot of American game adaptations at this time were like, we're not gonna, like, really be true to the games. This is something I talked about a little bit in the last episode, talking about Silent Hill, but it's something that's like, that was a little more accurate than a lot of stuff, but this was, like, really like, no, we are just kind of just gonna show you what if the game looked live action, and just whatever that ends up being on the page. They're not like, okay, we're gonna like try to give them like a little bit of a ridiculous hairstyle, but it's gonna be, more down to earth. They're like, no, this is and it's just like the screens and everything that come up, and just like
it's straight from the game. The flashes, the way the silhouettes, the objection pointing. Everybody nailed that objection point.
That was something I had in my notes. Is like the objection, like that's like the silhouette from like the
from the cover.
The big thing from the cover that everybody knows objection, and they really nail. Like it's almost like soap opera acting. Everyone is so big and over the top, but it feels very like true and accurate to.
That's how the game plays. Yeah.
And I think it has an advantage of being, like you mentioned, a visual novel, because it can just straight up tell the story. It doesn't have to worry about like so many video game movies do. Like, how do we translate this? Like Link's got to go get rupees to go buy a mask or whatever. Like, how do we make that something that's interesting? And it was like, no, there's already a story completely in the game.
And they translated the gameplay directly to the movie, which is unique and rare and maybe not the greatest idea for like a 10 out of 10 movie, but boy, was it fun.
Yeah.
It markets itself as a comedy, drama, crime. So you have to understand going in, this is funny. It is supposed to be funny. It is also unintentionally funny, I found. Particularly, and again, this is an American audience lens. This is somebody who's only familiar with the first game, right? So I understand the game mechanics. But the characters and their acting and the way that things are portrayed, and there's so much humor in it. There's often almost slapsticky humor. And there's definitely some humor that does not translate. The amount of times that I said that I wrote WTF in my notes was high. Because it's so, you just react to it. Like, it's just so goofy and over the top. But they were going for that. I know they were going for that. It definitely feels like culturally, I'm missing some context here.
Right, when they kept falling over, and like,
the audience falling over was like, but why?
I was like, there's something I'm not understanding here. Like, if I had a Japanese friend or something that could explain this to me, or like I had more context, I'm sure I would get it on a better level. But there's definitely a cultural divide on some stuff. Not on everything, because there's some stuff that was genuinely really funny, but there was a couple things.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The Americanized names, because I mean, I watched this with subtitles. I'm assuming you did too. You could hear the names were very different than the subtitled names, and that was definitely a very funny moment. Like, one of the characters is named Polly, but they say Sayuri so clearly.
Yeah. It's like, Americans know Polly's a parrot name. That's what I figured that was.
Name Polly the parrot, and that's definitely a cockatoo. So yeah, it's fun, it's goofy, it's silly, it's dramatic. There's a mystery. All the way through, and I think what kept me watching was definitely, I wanted to find out this convoluted mystery at the heart of things. It was goofy and silly, and it might have been a movie I had turned off had I not wanted to know, okay, but I want to know what really happened. And it really holds it on until the very last second. You keep thinking you find out what happens, and it keeps being like, but wait, there's more! It's so convoluted. So yeah, honestly, fun, funny. It was what it's marketed as. It's comedy, crime drama. It's very goofy. It is not at all representative of courts. There's always a joke, right, of like the SVU is like, that's not how courts really like. Boy, that is the case. This is not at all what court is like. And my partner pointed out, they object to the witnesses. That's not what objections are in court. And I was like, that's so true.
Right, yeah, because this movie, like, so many, like I said, so many, like, courtroom dramas and TV shows and stuff like that. Stuff like that I love, like Daredevil and stuff, or, like, you know, like, when everybody saw, what was it, The Anatomy of a Fall, people like, French court is wild, you know, and I don't know how much of that is accurate and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But this is, like, it's not, once again, it's not going for real court. It's not trying at all. It's going for this kind of hyper reality, and they even, like, say it. They're like, yeah, this is not real court. This is some kind of crazy.
This is a new system, right? A new bench trial system. You can only have 3 days.
3 days,
and that's it.
Yeah, so it's really striking the chord of, like, this big, goofy, over-the-top world in its acting, like we said, in the costumes and hairstyles, which are just, like, ridiculous and translated from the games, in the court itself, the way that after somebody is declared not guilty, like, these big, like, you know, holographic confetti and, like, words will come up, and it's just really doing. And if you're not like, if you just kind of go into this movie cold, you don't know what it's trying to do, you're not on its level, you don't have really any touch to with Japanese culture or the games, you're not going to
be ready.
Exactly.
You're not gonna be ready.
What did I watch? What did I just see?
And the opening scene does not prepare you at all for what the rest of the movie is going to be, because the opening scene is a spirit medium talking to a ghost.
Right. And
the ghost describing who killed them, and it's so... You are so lost. What is happening? Why? Who are these people? And of course, like, you don't get context for that scene until maybe halfway through. Yeah. For what even was going on there, and you're like, that's what that was supposed to be?
Yeah, because they really just kind of like you said, you're kind of always interested, you're always invested, you're always kind of wanting to learn more, because the way that getting all these things peppered out throughout the movie, you're like, okay, there's this one, it's almost like Twin Peaks or something, you know, where you have this central mystery, but then there's all these other weird, interesting characters and things that come up and start tying, everything kind of ties back to what that was. And there's that first initial trial, and you're like, okay, cool, that was interesting. Maybe that was just to, like, kind of introduce us to the characters, but that ends up being like, well, it comes back at the end and is very crucial to, like, everything that's gone on. And then there's another trial that's kind of the main one, but then that leads to, like, a secondary thing where they're investigating this murder from 15 years ago that they kept talking about, and you're like, why do they keep talking about this thing from 15 years ago? And it's like, nope, actually that was connected to this all along. And it's something you really have to pay attention to, especially since you're reading subtitles. You can't be, like, on your phone or whatever. You've got to be like kind of like locked in. Yeah.
Oh, if my dog walked in front of the subtitles, I missed it. It was very fast.
Yeah. But, like, so overall, like, what do you think about this movie, and what do you think about it as a video game adaptation?
If you are gauging your adaptation to faith to the series, nailed it. Whether or not that makes a great movie, debatable. I think it's fun. It's campy. if you like Japanese culture, you're gonna laugh. If you're familiar with the series, if you're this was made for fans, absolutely. If you're a fan of the series, this was for you. You're gonna laugh. You're gonna have fun with it. You will be surprised. There are some things that are not the same. I thought it might be just a retelling of the first game. It's not that at all. It definitely is more of an amalgamation as a whole. And it's also an anime now, so I think it's pulling from the anime storylines. Or potentially the movie fed the anime storylines. Not sure which. But yeah, underrated, I'm not sure. Unknown, definitely.
Yeah. Definitely under the radar.
Under the radar. Underrated. My search of it, it looked like people were giving it like 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10. I'd say that's fair. It's not a bad movie. It's such a niche particular movie that you've got to be the right audience, I think, to enjoy this. Please give it a try. If you have any inclination, give it a try, give it a watch. However, this was so faithful to the games. I think you'd have a hard time keeping up with it if you weren't at least familiar. Like if you don't know if you've never heard of the Phoenix Wright games or the Ace Attorney games, you might not have as good of a time. That's my review, I think, in a nutshell.
That's fair. Yeah, I think, going in, because I watched this originally when I was doing this miniseries like a couple years ago, and we didn't cover it, but I was trying to watch as many video game movies as possible. And this was when I was like, I didn't know that they made an Ace Attorney game, like that's something I've heard of.
Till you messaged me. That was when I found out there was an Ace Attorney movie.
Right?
And I liked the game.
Yeah. And so, like I had never played the game. I know Takashi Miike, like he's directed a couple pretty well-known movies here in the States, Audition, Ichi the Killer, stuff like that. Usually, like, I think he does a lot of stuff, but I think his most popular stuff, at least in the US, is a lot more horror-based. I was like kind of surprised, like, oh, he did, this video game movie that I didn't know existed. And so I went and watched it, and I had some familiarity with the games, but I never played it. And I actually was like, wow, this is pretty solid, Okay. And I was pretty impressed. It is like we said, there is a really compelling, interesting, multi-layered mystery at the heart of it. It at times I think plays more like a parody of courtroom stuff than real stuff. And watching it this time, I was thinking of, I don't know if you've seen the new, probably not because nobody has, but the new Francis Ford Coppola movie Megalopolis.
I have heard nothing but, whoa, that movie is a trip.
That movie is straight up awful. I'll just say that.
Oh no! I have heard so many people like trying to find something in it, but I'm scared I won't like it.
It's very, very bad. It's not even a so bad it's good movie. Aubrey Plaza's having a good time. She's something good in it. I'll say that. But but the reason I bring it up is because these movies, like on the surface, are very similar. But the difference, I think, is that Megalopolis thinks that it's a masterpiece. And Ace Attorney,
this is self-aware.
Right. This movie is like, it knows the vibe that it's going. It knows that this is supposed to be a ridiculous, over-the-top movie with characters that are doing things that, just kind of don't make sense and just are very goofy. And whereas, like, there's this sense of self-importance of Megalopolis. Like, this is the really important thing. And this movie, it has none of that. It is just a really fun romp. And I think it is too bad that it didn't get a wider audience because, like you said, it didn't come out here till years later. Because I think probably Nintendo or Capcom or whoever were worried, is this going to translate to an American audience? And I think that they probably had the people who made the movie probably had the same hangups. And you know what? They were wrong about the game. Like the games, like I said, became a big hit. So I think maybe people would have liked this movie. And like you said, I think a lot of people, who seen it generally like it. I think it's something that people aren't hailing it as like some unsung masterpiece. But in doing a little research, like I said, there was only like 4 critical reviews that were counted at the time. But there were actually not a lot of movie reviews, but a lot of video game reviewers reviewed the movie. And they were mostly pretty positive on it. Like Nintendo Life, I think, reviewed it. A lot of different, places that mostly focus on reviewing, just like the games themselves, reviewing it. And a couple of them were even like, I think this is the greatest video game adaptation. And I think at 2012, they might have been right. I think we've maybe passed it up with a couple movies, but I can't think of a movie that came out before this that was the video game adaptation specifically that was any better. Do you have any examples or?
So, it's funny that you brought up Silent Hill earlier, because that's one of my favorite video game movie adaptations. I genuinely enjoyed the first one, and I have introduced several people to it, and I said, no, give it a try. Just watch it. It's an interesting story. And I thought it was good. Now, Uwe Boll's video game movie little sprint there did not always end well. But I would agree, it's about at the same level as this. I'd give it a 6 or 7 out of 10, which is absolutely worth watching if it's your genre. If you know you like horror movies, give it a watch. I think you would be pleasantly surprised at how interesting it is and what the movie is trying to say. Like, there's a narrative that's interesting there. Same thing with Phoenix Wright. It's got something interesting to say, especially regarding, like, corruption and the way the court systems works. And yes, it's doing it through parody and satire. Very over the top, very camp. If you're the kind of person who thinks the name Dick Gumshoe is a funny name for a detective, you might like this movie.
Right. Or Frank, was it Frank Butts?
Yeah, literally. Or Larry Butts.
Larry Butts, yeah. Larry Butts.
The best friend's name is Larry Butts. I mean, it is that. There were several times I absolutely laughed out loud. And so if you like camp, and if you like a little bit of mystery, this is funny. It is a funny movie. I don't know that I would call it a good movie myself, personally.
That's fair.
I'm trying to think of a video game movie that came out before 2012 that I might measure it against. It's hard because there just weren't that many. Or there were games that also had movies, like, concurrently. It's not quite the same thing.
Yeah, there was a lot of, like, bad adaptations, I feel like. You brought
a lot of Resident Evil was the biggest one.
There was a lot of, like, UA Boll, and then a lot of, who I also mentioned in the other episode, Paul W.S. Anderson. Yeah. He did a lot of those, you know, like all those, like, just big, you know, ridiculous movies that had very little to do with their actual source material. You know, you had ones that are kind of beloved now, but, like, are pretty camp, like, movies from, like, the 90s, like your Mortal Kombats and your Street Fighters and things like that.
Oh, see, I have such a special place for the... They are technically video game movies, but they are not at all adaptations of video games, right? So the Super Mario Bros. Movie, I have a special place in my heart. I love it. It's so bad. It's so bad.
We did cover that last time we did this series. And that's the thing, is, like, it's kind of, like, so bad that it's good almost. It's kind of just, like, ridiculous.
Very
and it's
much.
Somehow, in my opinion, the best Mario Brothers movie we've gotten.
and yet, right? See, thank you. But it's not at all in the same vein that, like, Phoenix Wright or Silent Hill is, where they are actively trying to tell the story of the video game through movies as a medium. And I think the difference is the Ace Attorney movie gave zero effort to translating to a movie, to do things that are, well, this is a little bit better for a movie format than a video game format. Nope. They kept it straight like the video game, whereas Silent Hill did try to make it more of a movie experience. They're both very narrative games, right? Again, Mortal Kombat, it's not quite a video game movie. It's certainly video game inspired, right? I think it's fun. I enjoy watching that movie with a couple of drinks, but Ace Attorney, you don't need drinks to find it funny.
Right.
So that's a fair opinion, I would say.
Yeah. And it's interesting you brought up, like, how this is just a straight up adaptation of the game without a lot of thought put into consideration for how is this going to be in the medium of film. Whereas, like, I think that so many before this, you know, were like, this is going to it's going to have some stuff from the games just so that people can do the Leo Point meme or whatever. But it's not really, like, a real telling of the story. Whereas this almost kind of goes too far in the opposite direction, where it's just like you're not getting the things that you like. If you don't know this stuff, if you don't know the source material even a little bit, then, you know, you're going to kind of be like, what is it? Why is it doing this? If you're not familiar with the medium of video games, things might not make sense to you.
Yes.
Now I think we've really landed in a place probably a lot closer to Ace Attorney than, you know, a Resident Evil Extinction or something like that. But somewhere that is a more happy medium where, you know, you can have, like, a Fallout where it's like, it's not telling the story necessarily of any of the Fallout games, but it really is adapting the feel, the language of those games in a very accurate and profound way. And I think that this is an important step on that. Yeah.
And it's funny that you brought up Fallout because I think it translated so well. Video games are just a very specific medium of storytelling format, right?
Mhm.
And television, streaming shows in particular, where you can watch them all at once, are also just a very particular format. And what Fallout did beautifully was it took the elements that made the game great and it translated them to a television show wonderfully. And it was very captivating. People liked it for a reason. And it wasn't because it's a video game show. People just liked it as a TV show, right? Because you took the things that make the medium work and you went with those. Ace Attorney as a movie really does not give consideration to movie as a format other than a condensing of some plot lines. Otherwise, it's so faithful. So if you're judging your video game movies on how faithful was it, absolutely. Ace Attorney knocks it out of the park. That's the one.
Fair, yeah. I think because I did a list a while back, and I think I like listed all of my favorite video game movies, and I think I had this at like number 3 because I think it kind of shocked me about how much I did like this, and I think adaptation, how accurate it is, it plays a role, but I don't think it's in the top 5 most important things. I think it's more important for it to be a good movie, respecting the source material.
Mm-hmm.
But like that's lower on the list for me. But I do appreciate it still.
It has to be. Just a good movie in general for it to rank high, I think. And I think that may be where Ace Attorney misses, but it's also just so cultural. It is so culturally based that sometimes I didn't know if I was laughing at something they meant for me to laugh at, or if that was intentional. And there were definitely some jokes that did not land, and I think there are some, I'm just going to go ahead and put this out there are some cultural insensitivities in this movie that I think in 2012 we might not have caught, but in the year of our Lord 2024, we don't find that as acceptable as humor. Yeah, there was a moment where I'm not sure, and I'm not going to say for sure that this is the case, but I, as we were going through, said, was that blackface? In just a moment, and I went back and I looked and I was like, I can't really tell, but if you're questioning it, it's maybe don't do that. You know what I mean? If it's at all a question, it's not a good look. However, I understand in Japanese culture, it's not as problematic as we would view it in America. Especially, I'm from the South. In the American South, you don't do that. Mm-hmm. So, and there's also the subtitles are written in such a way for one of the characters that I can tell they're going for a slang, but it comes off a little bit disingenuous. Like that's not how we use slang. This seems like a tokenized disease. Yeah. And I understand, like I took a semester of Japanese language, so I understand they're definitely conveying this is a more informal Japanese way of speaking. But the way they wrote those, it doesn't translate quite right. I don't know what they were going for, because there's ways to write slang that feels natural, and the way that they wrote it was so unnatural.
Right. Yeah. I kind of wonder, like, about the translation, because that's always like a thing, especially with Japanese video games. Like, there's the "all your base belong to us," like,
yes.
Or if you look at like the old Zelda games, like some there's some wonky translations in that first game.
Yeah.
So you're always kind of like wondering, is this something that was being not a Japanese speaker? I'm like, is this something that was just a weird translation? Because it did seem like it was a pretty good translation. Like, it did seem.
As far as like the direct text of what they were saying, I don't think that was the problem. I think the joke was supposed to be the way that this character was speaking was the joke. And I don't think that we would necessarily find that humorous in America, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no.
At least not the way that I read it or portrayed. And I'm not saying you can't find it funny. I am merely putting a question out there and giving a little bit of a heads up that, if you're questioning this while you're watching it, that's okay. It's okay to question and say, I'm not sure I find that funny, but cultural differences, right? So just a heads up, just a warning. Not saying that I condemn it for sure, but I saw some things that I don't think that's a good joke.
Yeah, that's fair. And yeah, it's like you said, it's one of those things. It's tough because it's sticky, like it's culturally.
Tough. It is sticky.
Like when I watch, like
I'm no authority. I'm not. Right, yeah, I just know what my opinion of it was, and I can say I gave it a little side eye at some moments. But
right, like when I watch like Full Metal Alchemist and you see like black characters drawn a certain way, you're like, you don't draw that character that way in America.
I don't think that that's kosher right now.
Yeah.
So, but
or like the thing with like Jinx, like the Pokemon Jinx, and like all that stuff. And
yes, absolutely. I think you're hitting the nail on the head there. Very Mr. Popo in Dragon Ball Z. Yeah, I think it is still very much okay in Japanese culture to make fun of somebody's body type, for example. And these days, as a wider audience, most people aren't going to find that funny in North America. That's just cultural. So there are definitely things like that where to them it's just another joke, but to us we can see the harm from that joke, and we wouldn't necessarily support that kind of humor.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's just a couple of characters that I gave it a little side eye. But in a lot of ways, all of these characters are tokenizing certain types of characters you see in video games, which are very much stereotyping. The lazy Japanese student, the hardworking top of the class student, right? So there's stereotypes of all kinds. There are just some stereotypes, I think, in America we find that's not funny.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a very, very fair way of putting it. But yeah, was there any other moments that in a more positive way stuck out to you?
Oh, I thought the side mystery of the Nessie style monster, Gordy, hilarious. I saw it coming a mile away and I still loved its resolution. You know what I mean? Like, just because you know where it's going doesn't mean it's not funny in the end. And that one was very much, it was telegraphed, but it was so funny.
Right. When that revelation comes up, you're just kind of like, that's perfect. That's so good. And
they tied every little scene back together at the very end. There was no minor mystery that wasn't somewhere tied up in a little bow at the end.
Yeah, exactly. And they even kind of like hang a lantern on at the end where they're like, there's one mystery left. Wait, who stole the lunch money? And you're like, of course it was,
it was Butts. Of course it was Butts, but it was still really funny the way that they laughed together and they chased each other and they teased each other a little bit. And he says the line, I became a lawyer because of that, Funny, very funny.
Yeah.
And that was clearly written to be funny, and it was funny. I laughed out loud at it. I definitely ended that movie going, wow.
I've got a lot of grandbabies, like a lot. And when it comes to finding a gift for each of them, it could add up. But this year, while I was making my way through Walmart, I realized I don't have to spend a lot to get the gifts they'll love.
An OPI mini mani set! I'm gonna do so much nail art. Oh, yeah! A Lego set! Might own a Walla water bottle!
Ooh, and that's just half of them.
Shop great gifts they're sure to love for $25 and under at Walmart.
The holiday season officially starts when you get that first card in the mail. Shutterfly makes it easy to add more meaning to the everyday with hundreds of holiday card designs that can be personalized in seconds with your favorite photos from this year. Select your greeting, customize the color, and even add little extras like personalized foil to make a holiday card that really shines. Enjoy 40% off with code SMILE40 at Shutterfly.com and send something meaningful this year. See site for more details.
Yeah, it was so literal. It was just so literal. And very, very blunt, very fun, very camp.
Yeah.
I had a good time.
Yeah, I feel like, it was like I said, at the time, video game fans were really starved for content that didn't treat them like the lowest common denominator, that just wasn't like, this is just an IP for us to make money on. This is something that we really care about. And I think Silent Hill was one of the first to really do that. And I think this one really, even to another level, they're like, we're going to get this really respected director. We're going to really go all in on making this as accurate as possible. This feels like it was really made for the fans. And it's just, and especially for the Japanese fans, because like I said, this never gets, and it was something that I guess they wanted to have it come out internationally, but it never did. And it's too bad. And it remains unseen by most people, but hopefully this podcast can move the needle just a little bit.
I do genuinely hope people will watch it from listening to this review. I paid all of 89 cents to rent it in high definition on Amazon Prime. So that was great. So yeah, absolutely worth my 89 cents. 100%. I would have paid $5 and felt like, all right, I got my money's worth because I had a lot of laughs. And again, I am a fan. I know it was written for me. I do watch enough Japanese media that I definitely felt included in some of these cultural jokes. There were 100% ones I know went over my head. But if you enjoy foreign media, you just know that's the case. If you're watching a subtitled movie, I don't think it bothers you that much that there's going to be things that go over your head, and that's fine. You can still enjoy the rest of it for what it is. And you learn stuff. Absolutely. Wow, okay. Spiritual mediums, they're like that, huh?
Yeah.
Would never have considered. Yeah, fun movie, fun mystery, very campy. Watch it with some friends and laugh together. Always better when you can laugh with people at a movie. I'm a huge proponent of going to theaters for comedies. We have lost that as a culture, and that's what makes them so much fun. Is don't go to the theater for the big budget action movie. Go to a funny movie, because when other people laugh, it makes you enjoy it more.
Yeah.
So that's my little soapbox on movies of the day.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there's two kind of movies that like are. I mean, I think going to see any movie in a group is better, but like there's two kind of like genres especially because they seem opposite, but they elicit a very similar reaction where it's comedies and horror, because it's just like when you're in a movie and like you're on pins and needles and everyone's like, or when you're in like everybody's cracking up. Like I will never forget watching Superbad for the first time at my college with a bunch of people who are all freshmen in college. And, like, watching this movie about the end of high school, something we had all just been through, and we were just dying, because it was just so relatable to all of us, and we were just, like, cracking up. And I love experiences like that, so I think very, very well put. The one last question I have for you before we start wrapping up is, we talked about how there was not a ton of video game stuff pre this, but in the last few years, there has really been a boom of video game adaptations. And you said, that's something you have an affinity for. Do you have a favorite or favorites that you wanted to shout out?
Ooh, yes. I love video game media. Are we underrated as a movies podcast? Are we going to limit it to movies specifically?
You can bring up shows if you want.
Okay, because the Fallout show was amazing, and I know we already talked about that, but I can't recommend it enough. You don't have to like Bethesda games at all, but if you like Bethesda games, you're going to laugh so hard at some of the little things, some of the little lines. Are we allowed to swear?
Oh, fuck yeah.
Okay, great. There is a moment where the ghoul says, "Number one rule of the wasteland, thou shalt be sidetracked by bullshit." And it's like, That's so true!
It's so accurate. And oh my god, Walton Goggins is like, that's like, has there ever been such perfect casting? Like, Wally Goggs, dude. So
Every
good.
girl I know is in love with the ghoul. That's on everyone's Hear Me Out cakes right now. Do you know the Hear Me Out cake trend?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So these are the characters that you find attractive that are maybe not conventionally attractive. And I have to say, the ghoul is the top tier right now. Hey,
That's
no
fair.
judgment. I love it. I would have to say the Sonic movies are delightful. Detective Pikachu blew away my expectations. I'm a huge Pokemon fan, and seeing little things like Loudred as a speaker just casually brings me so much joy. I thought it was so well done. I'm trying to think of other ones beyond Silent Hill. I don't know. The original Super Mario Bros. Movie, like we mentioned.
It's good stuff.
Let me see what's coming out. Oh, I thought the reboot of Mortal Kombat wasn't that bad.
Yeah, I like that. I had that on my list of best video game adaptations. I thought that was pretty fun. I'm a big stan of Hiroyuki Sanada. He's like my favorite character, and getting to see him as Scorpion and get over here. Like, I thought that was fucking great.
Yeah, no, that when he finally says that line. And I do love that they focused on Sub-Zero and Scorpion. Yeah, I thought that was a good movie. I would rate it very similarly, like a 6 or 7. Mm-hmm. Does Tron count as a video game movie? Or is
I would say it's not a video game adaptation, because they made a video game based on it later, but yeah. But it's a classic. It's a classic. Yeah, I haven't seen the Far Cry movie. I definitely should. I think Uwe Boll directed that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's one of the UA Bowl ones,
Yeah.
but I should watch it just to see. I'm the kind of person that I will absolutely watch a movie that's even tangentially interesting, just to experience it. But yeah.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned a lot of ones that I liked, and I've talked about Detective Pikachu.
So good.
For me, just a very important film. Pokemon, other than probably Zelda, is like the biggest video game franchise for me, and so next episode, actually, I'm going to be talking about Pokemon the first movie. So I had a lot of fun with that.
Oh, I still have my golden Mewtwo
little
trinket from the movie.
Ancient...
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, I still have it. I loved that movie. It was very important to me as a kid. And one of the funniest things that I will never forget from watching that was my family was the only one in the theater. But we were all in.
Oh yeah. But yeah, since you brought up shows, I'll mention a show that I don't think I've talked about yet, which is the reboot of Carmen Sandiego that came out a couple years ago on Netflix. Is really fucking good. Like, and people kind of forget that Carmen Sandiego is a video game adaptation. Like, before the game show or like the old show or anything, it was like a learning video game. And this it reboots it in a way where Carmen is like now kind of like a hero thief, but it's very true to those, like, all the old media in the games and stuff like that. Gina Carano, or is it her? She's like plays Carmen, and it's just, I don't know, it's just a really well done show that is technically a kid show, but has a lot of stuff for all audiences. So I think it's just called Carmen Sandiego, and so I highly recommend that to anybody, because I thought it was just a spectacular thing, and yeah, it's on Netflix. So yeah, let me make sure I'm getting actor. Yeah, Gina Rodriguez, is that what I said? I think I said Gina Carano. Gina Rodriguez. Okay. Yeah, she's great. And then, Finn Wolfhard is on the show too.
Oh, I love him.
Yeah, he kind of plays like her man in the chair, so it's pretty fun. So that was more of an underrated one, but yeah, that I think, yeah, some definitely some good video game stuff out there. We're kind of now in a golden age of video game adaptations that we certainly were not at in 2012. So I'm glad it's a whole new kind of world for us.
It brings my little nerd heart so much joy to see the things that I love getting wider recognition as art, right? And that was always something as a kid that I was just never recognized. And there are so many good video game stories out there. Video games that are as moving as any other form of media, right? Whether it's funny, whether it's sad, whether it's exciting. And so, like, it's a way to get to share our joy with the rest of the world, right? And it's so good. So I'm so excited you're doing the video game series, and I will definitely be listening to all the other episodes. And I'm going to come back with critiques. So y'all better be on it.
All right, I'm excited. Glad to hear. And thank you for being on too. Like, this has been a blast. Before you leave, where can people, you're a streamer, where can people see you, hear you, all that good stuff?
Absolutely. So you can find me on Twitch. I'm on twitch.tv/RiriYells, RIRIYELLS. I do a lot of yelling. I promise I won't yell at you if you come to hang out with me. But we have a Discord, we hang out, we have fun. I play lots of games with my community. So yeah, come on out. And then you can also hear me on the Old Switcheroo podcast with Mike and JMO. I have several Zelda episodes and some upcoming. So,
yeah, it's good stuff. I definitely have listened to a few of those, being the Zelda fan that I I might have petitioned them to be on some future episodes. So yeah, like we said, there's a preview for you guys.
Little teaser.
Yeah. But yeah, if you guys have liked this, I would love anybody out there listening to give the show 5 stars. That really helps independent shows like this out quite a bit. However you're listening, Spotify, Apple, if you're on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube. For all the stuff, just go to underratedmoviepodcast.com. There's links to all of the social media, all the different apps and places and things you can listen to, and a bunch of other stuff, including Underrated's Patreon, or you can sign up for as low as $1 a month, get all kinds of bonus stuff. If you sign up for $3, you can get a whole bonus podcast there. I would love you guys to check out some more of that stuff. Of course, after you check out Riri. But yeah, thank you all so much for listening. Oh, and one more thing I'll mention too before I get out of here is check out my other podcast that I do where I'm just the co-host, hosted by my buddy Damien, called Midnight Film Society, where on opposite Mondays that Underrated comes out, we kind of just talk about recent release stuff. So that's a lot of fun too. But yeah, once more, Riri, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And I'll see you guys all next time.